Welcome back to FOXSOUL's Black Report. Well, comedian Kamau Bell is sitting down with a number of San Francisco Bay Area families to talk growing up mixed.
Yeah, his new documentary, 1000% Me, Growing Up Mixed, explores interracial couples, their multiracial kids, and uncovers insight about the experience and identity formation of being young and multiracial today.
That's right, and here to discuss his new documentary is Emmy-winning producer, director, host, and comedian Kamau Bell. Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report, brother.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Hey, first of all, how you doing, man? I know you talk about subjects that are very inspired and sometimes controversial. You've traveled the country and done so many things. What inspired this?
My kids, me and my wife. My wife's white, I'm black, as you can see. We have 3 mixed race daughters. They identify as black and mixed race. And then our oldest daughter, Sammy, has other mixed race friends who are mixed in ways she's not mixed. And so we were just curious about what these kids were thinking about, what they were talking about. And so that's what inspired the film.
And tell us, what do you really want folks to learn from this documentary, especially in a time like this where there's lots afoot that's anti-black in rhetoric and in legislation? What do you want people to get from this documentary right here and right now?
So there's 2 things. One, that I think sometimes we think that mixed folks are somehow not rejecting like the black side if they're mixed with black and something else. And I think what we understand from this film is that mixed folks believe I'm not half of this and half of that. I'm both, that it's addition. So I think that's one thing, and allowing mixed folks a place to talk about their experiences. Not all the folks are mixed with black in here, but just allowing them a space, because a lot of mixed folks I've heard from say, as adults, they don't feel like they have the time or place to talk about their experience. The second thing is we are at a time in this country, as you both know, where they're saying we should not teach an accurate history of this country that covers enslavement and Jim Crow and structural racism and inequality. And these kids sit down in this documentary and very effortlessly talk about all those things, and they're not overwhelmed by it, and they can deal with it. So hopefully we will airdrop these over Florida so we can get that state right.
You can say that again.
And then go back home. Just airdrop them, let them fix it, and then go back home. Let's talk about this. I know it used to be one drop and you're part of the black community is the way I was told when I was a kid. What are some of the reasons that the kids state make them feel overlooked? And also, when you have kids and your own kids, are they in the subject matter? Did you feel a certain kind of way about broaching the subject? Because as a dad, you want to make sure they're okay talking.
Well, yeah, I mean, in our house, we have these conversations all the time. So my kids, they're like me. I grew up celebrating Kwanzaa when I think I was the only black kid in the neighborhood who did so. So that my kids are celebrating Kwanzaa, but they're also going to their family's house, my wife's family, to have crab cioppino on Christmas Eve, because that's how the Italian Americans do it. So our kids are very capable of having these conversations. We have them all the time. And I think that's the thing that's important, is that the earlier you talk to kids about this stuff, the more they're able to deal with it. And again, I think what you're talking about, that 1 drop rule, is because you're talking about a time where, and this still exists, there's a lot of black folks in the South who are light skinned would never think of themselves as being mixed, because that's not how the culture is. But if you're talking about kids around the country and they have a black dad and a Chinese American mom, they see the mix of cultures all the time. So they can't think of themselves as being one or the other. They think of themselves as being both.
And speaking of being both, and I have plenty of mixed nieces and nephews, and this question comes up when people get real comfortable. But I'm going to ask you, what's your response when people, call folks like you that have married outside of their race a sellout for marrying outside of your race?
Well, luckily, me and my wife have been together for 20 years. So unless you're going to help me pay the rent, I'm not going to really take comments on what you think about my marriage. So let me just say that clearly. I understand that there are black folks who feel a type of way, and when I'm in those spaces, if they want to talk to me and have a respectful conversation about it, I will have that conversation. I'm not responding to every internet comment about it. I understand where that comes from, but one of the things that the film says, and I think we know this generally, is that you got to follow your heart. You got to follow where your heart goes. So I am not here to say that interracial marriages are the way to go. I'm not trying to encourage or push them on anybody. I'm saying that's the way I went. Me and my wife are a good partnership and a good team, and we got great kids. And if you want to explain to me why I made a bad choice, first you got to help me pay my mortgage.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You've traveled around and talked to so many people. When you come across somebody that's caustic, when you come across somebody that you need to have a conversation with that doesn't necessarily know how to have this conversation, how do you talk to them about cultural differences in a marriage?
I mean, so first of all, let me be clear. On my first episode of United Shades of America, I had a member of the KKK tell me that
did.
We remember that.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. I remember the KKK told me that interracial marriage was worse than murdering somebody. So after I survived that, I'm pretty good at listening to people in conversation. I think a lot of times in conversations, especially when people are talking about controversial or divisive things, people want to trigger you. They want you to react. So they're trying to bait me all the time. But I'm pretty good at this conversation thing. So I'm able to sit across from somebody, even if they don't like me, if they don't respect what I'm saying, and listen to them. Because a lot of times, by the time they get to the end of what they're saying and you haven't interrupted them, they don't know what else to say. And then you can actually have a real conversation.
So tell us, what is it like raising multicultural kids? Is there a difference of conversation or style from raising black kids?
I mean, it's funny. I think that we sort of overstate the difference. I mean, if you're a black person who was born in Chicago and you marry a black person who was born in Mobile, Alabama, there are going to be cultural differences there that you have to figure out. So anytime you're marrying somebody outside of your immediate community, there's going to be things that are different. Now, the difference is in our household, we have to have the serious racism conversation, and my kids have it with me, their black dad, but they also have it with their white mom, which a lot of kids don't get to have a conversation like that with white people, maybe ever, certainly, so I think that there's just different levels to the conversation. Doesn't make it better, it just makes it different.
I've had to have conversations with my daughter. She's 14, and there have been words, including the N-word, that has been used at her school. People are so much more caustic at home, and those kids are bringing it to their environment as well. What did you tell your kids when it comes to those kinds of conversations? Because it seems like, I don't know about other ethnicities, but it seems like African Americans are having to have these conversations with each other and with their children right now.
I mean, I think the thing is that trying to teach our kids, you know who you are, and always stand up for who you are. So don't let somebody else tell you who you are or who you are not. Now, luckily, we live in the Bay Area. It ain't perfect out here, but it is a lot different than lots of other places around this country.
Yes.
So I would say this, that I think it's important that parents really don't condescend to your children, don't think your kids aren't ready, I have kids who will correct the teacher if need be. So that's the kind of kids I think as black folks we have to raise. Kids who are prepared and smarter than your average kid, because the world out here is dangerous for us.
Well, we want to thank you for this work. We want to thank you for continuing to give us more food for thought. But more importantly, thank you for joining us here today. Come on back again soon. 1000 Me, Growing Up Mix premieres on HBO tomorrow, May 2nd. And so, Soulmates, be sure to check it out.